smells like.
How's everybody doing? Okay? Good? Good? All right. Surviving. Right. So I'm always surprised those first couple of days after Thanksgiving, people are more tired than they are rested up. And it's like it's supposed to be the other way around. My 8th graders came dragging in on Monday morning. I said, what are you guys so tired for? You've been sleeping for 5 days, right? So I don't know, I don't get it. But anyway, so welcome back. This is the last of our sessions for 3160. After today, it's kind of turned back over to you and your advisors. The ball is back in your court then to write your paper and finish all that you need to do. So we've got a couple different pieces we need to do to kind of wrap up today for the semester and for our part of the class of meeting together. So sort of we're going to do it kind of in two halves. In the first half of our session, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Hillary Snyder. She's from the Office of Compliance. So let me just tell you a couple things about that from my perspective. Raise your hand if you have ever either been involved in an interview or you've taken a survey that said that by completing the survey or by doing this interview, you consent to the information you're giving being used for research purposes. Now that's a trick question because every hand in the room should be up. And I'll tell you why. Because when you came during Summer Bridge, you were asked to do that in the summer. And in fact, there have been a number of other surveys that you've done since you've been here that have actually said that. So for example, during the Summer Bridge, Dr. Matuga did a survey with you at the very beginning of the summer, kind of asking you some questions about motivation and different things that you do and so forth. I think you eventually did that, didn't you, Rachel? Did you fill that survey out? If you haven't, I'm going to need to get one to you at some point. Anyway, but Dr. Matuga did that, and that survey actually started off with a question about whether you consent to allowing that survey data to be used. And in fact, you consented to a lot of things. You consented to being able to use any kinds of data that we've collected on you through the Action Project for some of the writing and publications that we've done. So for example, Dr. Bostic and I just wrote a paper together about Action that we submitted for publication, and it uses some of your data that we've collected on you. Isn't that interesting? You may not realize that, but you've given consent to use that. But the bottom line is, one of the things that we do whenever we publish anything like that is we never use anybody specifically by name. We're not going to say Corinne said this. We will say instead that 41% of the people in Action felt this way. You know, that kind of a deal, so that we're summarizing things. So you're actually part of that. And you probably wouldn't be surprised to know that if I was a physician, or as my kids said when I was little, a real doctor, that I think they still say that. But anyway, if I were a physician and I were going to try some kind of an experimental drug on you, I would probably want to ask you beforehand if it's okay that I do that. Because if I'm going to run an experiment on you and it's going to be on your body, you probably want to know that I'm using an experimental medication and you're going to be part of a study. You'd have to consent to that beforehand. So as it turns out, there are some kinds of research that are done that require some kind of consent to be given to be able to do that research. And that's a whole other ballgame that we haven't talked about during this semester that I wanted to make sure that you're exposed to and realize what that process looks like, who handles it, how they handle it, and so forth. And so that's where Dr. Snyder comes in here with her presentation today to kind of give you some insight as to what her office does and the role that she plays in getting consent for some of the studies that are being done. So I'm going to turn it over to you. They're all yours.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. There are federal regulations that require, for example, if people want to do research with animals or recombinant DNA or human subjects, that they have to have that research approved before they can conduct it. So that's why my office exists, is we are the intermediate between the researchers and the boards that review this research. So in addition to being a compliance officer, I also administer all of these boards. So today we'll just be talking about research with human subjects. And the board that reviews research with human subjects at Bowling Green State University is called the Human Subjects Review Board, or HSRB. And the HSRB is just a group of mostly faculty, some staff, a graduate student, and community members that are appointed by the institutional official. And our institutional official is Dr. Michael Gowa, who's the Vice President for Research and Economic Development. And this group of people are simply charged with protecting the rights and welfare of humans that participate in research studies. And the responsibilities of the HSRB are given directly by the federal government. So the federal government has regulations that says exactly what's required and what the board has to look for in studies. The HSRB does a lot of things. So before a project with research with human subjects can start, the HSRB conducts an initial review of the project. If they approve the project, it can only be approved for a maximum of 12 months. So if researchers want to continue, they have to go through a continuing review process. So the HSRB reviews that. And the HSRB also reviews any proposed changes to an approved project. So say they want to recruit people a little bit differently, or they want to add a survey in addition to an interview. All of that has to be approved before it can be done. The HSRB also follows up on different issues. So maybe there's a person in a research study and they have concerns about the study or complaints that they want to tell somebody about. They can tell the HSRB and the HSRB investigates that. If someone thinks that researchers are violating the regulations, not following their protocol, or state regulations or BGSU policies that are related to research with human subjects, the HSRB has to review that as well. So we have an HSRB because we have these regulations, but why do we have the regulations? If you look at the history of research ethics, there are numerous examples that have demonstrated that researchers can't always weigh the risks and benefits of their own research. So that would be benefits to their field of study, or maybe benefits to participants. The benefits always have to be more than the risk to subjects who participate in the study. So I just want to tell you about one example. The United States Public Health Service conducted a study on syphilis in African American men. The study started out in 1932 and it went on for 40 years. The researchers wanted to trace the history of syphilis in African American men. They enrolled about 400 men with syphilis and about 200 men without syphilis. They got them to participate in the study by offering them free medical exams, free meals, and free burial insurance. I always thought that one sounded a little odd, free burial insurance. But the researchers never gave the subjects an informed consent, which means the researchers never told the men about the purpose of the study, the benefits of the study, the risks of being in the study. They didn't give them any information. They never told the men with syphilis that they had syphilis. They only told them that they had bad blood, which was a term back then that meant a lot of different things. So, it could be anemia, it could be syphilis, it could be a lot of different issues. In 1940, doctors found out that penicillin could be used to treat syphilis. In 1947, it was common practice for doctors to treat people that had syphilis with penicillin. The researchers still didn't tell the men that they had syphilis and didn't treat them. So the study goes on for 40 years with these men not being treated, and numerous participants died, and their families were impacted by this as well. So when the public found out that this was going on, they were outraged, and it resulted in the drafting of the Belmont Report. There's 3 principles in the Belmont Report: respect for persons, beneficence, and justice. Respect for persons is that idea that you have to tell people that might want to participate in your study all about it, And then once they have all of the information, then they can decide if they want to participate or not. Beneficence means that the benefits of the study always have to outweigh the risks of participation. It's the idea that researchers will do no harm to research subjects. And justice means that no one group of people should bear the risk of participating in the study if the results are going to apply to other populations as well. So with the syphilis study, they targeted these African American men in a poor rural area because it was easier to recruit them in the study. So those men bore the risks of participation when it benefited anybody who had syphilis. So to give you kind of the more complex picture now, so again, why do we have an HSRB? Well, we want to make sure that the study is ethical and that it's not going to hurt participants. The federal regulations require it, and BGSU policy requires it. So, I'm talking to you because you're all going to do some action research. And there's definitely a lot of gray areas with action research. Do I need approval by the HSRB or not? And I don't want to get too bogged down in these definitions, but I do want you to know that the federal regulations have a definition of what a human subject is, and they have a definition of what research is. And if your project meets both the definitions of a human subject and research, then the HSRB has to approve your project. So think of human subjects just as living people who someone is collecting information about. And research, we're going to think about it as you have some sort of a question and you're going to collect information to answer that question. And the results of your study you could apply to other populations. So your results would be generalizable. So I've got to think about 7 different examples, and we can decide if HSRB approval would be needed or not. And I'm going to walk you through the first one, and then the rest of them, you can tell me what you think. So, I want to know if the use of iPads in my classroom will improve my students' grades. I'll compare the grades of my students this year who use iPads to the grades of my students who did not use iPads last year. And the purpose of this study is I want to improve my course. I want to improve my own teaching. I want to make sure that I am helping these students learn. So first we ask, are human subjects involved? Well, yes, because we have students and we're collecting information about them, which is their grades. And we say, is this research? So we do have a research question. We want to know if iPads improve students' grades. We have a plan on how we're going to do it. So we've got all the grade information that we collect and compare. Is it generalizable? Probably not, because I'm just using it with my class and my students. The project is designed to help me be a better teacher. So now I've got another example which is really similar to this, but a little bit different, and hopefully it'll help clarify things. So I want to know if the use of iPads improves students' grades. I'm going to collaborate with other 5th grade teachers at several different schools. We'll all provide iPads to one of our classes of students, and we won't provide iPads to the other class of students. Then, at the end of the year, all the 5th grade teachers will get together and we'll share our grades, and then we'll be able to compare all the grades from the 5 schools of students that used iPads and those that didn't. So, do we have human subjects? Yes. Okay, so same as the last one.